Colleagues, today I'm introducing a resolution calling for a sustained ceasefire in Gaza.
Members of the public. Members of the public, we really want you here today, so thank you for showing your support. The best way to show your support is to show your hands without the audible sounds. That way we can keep going with the board's business. Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Supervisor Preston.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. I'm introducing a resolution calling for a sustained ceasefire in Gaza, humanitarian aid, and the release of all hostages, and condemning anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, and anti-Palestinian hate. I believe this resolution is compelled by the moment and offers an opportunity for us to come together in defense of human life. I want to start by thanking everyone who has weighed in, regardless of their viewpoint, for their engagement with our office, especially the many people of San Francisco who have deep connections to the region, including in some cases family, friends, and loved ones there. So many San Franciscans are experiencing intense trauma, fear, anxiety, loss, and grief. Talking with them and reading their stories and listening has been intense over this last week and important. I want to be very clear about my intentions in putting this forward. It is to add our voice to the chorus of international human rights organizations and humanitarian organizations, countries, cities, labor unions, and city residents who are calling for an end to the violence, destruction, and death that is taking place overseas, and to acknowledge the pain and trauma that these events have had on many people here in our city. To that end, we took the very unusual step of releasing a draft resolution to a broad range of stakeholders a full week before today's introduction. And it has not been an easy week. We have had many difficult conversations, but I will say I'm very glad that we followed this path. And we've amended the original draft resolution to reflect much of the input that we received. I continue to believe that the resolution being introduced today, which recites incontrovertible facts and calls for peace and the protection of human life, should not be controversial. We have a catastrophic situation right now in Israel and Gaza. I have personally issued a public statement unequivocally condemning both the October attacks by Hamas and the Israeli bombardment of Gaza. The extent of the death and destruction is still hard to fathom. Over 1,200 Israelis were murdered on October 7th. Over 15,000 Palestinians have been murdered since October 7th. An estimated 1.7 million Palestinians have been displaced. These events have shocked the conscience of people across the world. I am not the first to call for a ceasefire, and I will not be the last. I'm inspired by the growing movement across this city and the nation for peace and human rights. Millions are marching in the streets worldwide demanding a ceasefire and increasingly showing up to demand their elected representatives take a stand for human rights in this defining and crucial moment. As the child of a Holocaust survivor, I have lived my life with a commitment that I trust we all share on this board, that all human life is precious, that nobody is worth more or less based on their religion, their race, the color of their skin, or their national origin. And that, more than anything, is the heart of this resolution. All human life is precious, and this is a moment to speak up and take action to save lives. Before and since announcing this resolution, I have heard from thousands of San Franciscans experiencing severe pain and trauma. Palestinians here in our city feel particularly unseen, unheard by this country's leaders, who continue to unconditionally back the destruction of Gaza and the killing of thousands of Palestinians, including thousands of children, even while the vast majority of the American public wants a ceasefire. Just this morning, I heard from a Palestinian American friend here in San Francisco who informed me, and I quote, "7 more members of my family have been killed overnight Excuse me. 7 more members of my family have been killed overnight and this morning. At least 100 have already been killed since October 7th. Close quote. Meanwhile, Jews are still in shock with the October 7th massacre fulfilling the worst fears and nightmares of so many of us. And I think it can be hard for non-Jews to understand the damage that the brutal attack on October 7th did worldwide to the sense of security and safety of Jews. In my own family, my father lived every day of his life traumatized by the Holocaust he narrowly escaped that claimed the life of his grandmother and nearly every one of his elementary school classmates. Having nightmares his whole life, waking up screaming, fearing, and warning that a day like October 7th would come. It is beyond tragic to see anti-Semitic opportunists and conspiracy theorists seize this moment to deny atrocities against Jews, and equally tragic how the very real pain and trauma of Jewish people is weaponized by the right wing and rising anti-democratic forces in our country and around the world. So, as you can tell, I've been moved to tears by these stories, not just today, but all week and before. The heartbreak, the trauma so many people are going through right now, not just because of what's happening thousands of miles away, but because of how it's been weaponized in this country through propaganda, through disinformation, and conspiracy theories, impacting people's safety and security here at home. Right now, with rising hate, so many Jews, Israelis, Palestinians, and Muslims here in San Francisco simply do not feel safe in our community. The safety that we want for the entire community here is not possible when people are being dehumanized. The ongoing bombardment of Gaza and mass killing and displacement of Palestinians and the collective silence of U.S. leaders as this occurs makes everyone less safe. A ceasefire, humanitarian aid, and release of all hostages are essential ingredients for peace abroad and safety and security here in our city. As of today, I've received positive comments about the resolution from many colleagues and have incorporated several requests for changes in what we're introducing today. I understand that there are some advocates who have publicly cautioned against introducing a resolution of any kind on this topic. It is regrettable that some, very few, but some have mischaracterized this resolution, which was drafted based on input we received from a wide array of stakeholders, to silence those who are calling for a ceasefire, rather than seeking common ground to address this humanitarian crisis that has already taken too many lives. But it is worth emphasizing that the language in this resolution is designed to underscore our shared humanity and bring people together in defense of human life. So I encourage everyone to read the resolution and decide for yourself, and we welcome your ongoing input. Colleagues, I invite you to join me in standing on the right side of history by supporting this resolution. And from the bottom of my heart, I want to thank Supervisor Ronan for her co-sponsorship of this resolution. Thank you for your consideration. The rest I submit.
Thank you, Supervisor Preston. Supervisor Ronan.
Thank you, colleagues, and thank you, Supervisor Preston, for those words. They're very similar to the ones I'm about to share, I think, because we've shared a very similar family history. I want to say that I'm very, very proud to be co-sponsoring Supervisor Preston's resolution calling for a permanent ceasefire in the war on Gaza. As most of you know, my dad, who passed away 2 years ago, was Israeli, and he served in the Israeli Defense Force as a paratrooper. My aunt, my uncle, my cousins live in Tel Aviv. I love my family very much, and I'm very worried about them every single day. My great aunt and uncle were survivors of the Holocaust, and I will never forget, as a kid, seeing the tattooed numbers on Josep, my great uncle's forearm, the brand that was forced upon him in Auschwitz. My mom's grandparents immigrated to the United States after hiding while their parents were killed during the pogroms in Russia. My family's history has shaped me at my core, and my deep commitment to justice is rooted in my Jewish identity and the history of my people. I cannot tell you how many times since October 7th I have thought about what my dad would do and what he would say today about the war in Gaza. We often had conflict about Israel-Palestine, but at the same time, he always wanted peace. When I was a kid, he would take me to conflict resolution discussions between Israelis and Palestinians in Los Angeles. These actually existed at the time. They were hosted by Casey Kasem, who was an Arab radio personality in the 80s who hosted the American Top 40. My dad would explain to me as a child that we must find a way to live together because Israelis and Palestinians are cousins. I explain all this to say that by supporting the resolution before us and calling for an end to the killing, hostages, bombing, starving, and dehumanization of people in Palestine and Israel, that I am not anti-Semitic, I am not one-sided, I am not overstepping the bounds of my job, and I am not pro-Hamas. I am engaging very thoughtfully in a conflict fueled by my and my constituents' tax dollars. And this conflict is deeply rooted in my personal life and my identity. The world must finally stand up and demand a lasting peace for Israel and Palestine. A permanent ceasefire is only the beginning. We must be part of demanding that a peace process commence and see it through to completion, withholding international aid if necessary to force a solution. This is the only way to achieve safety for Israelis and Palestinians and begin to heal from a lifetime of trauma. Trauma on all sides. My people have lived through genocide and persecution throughout the history of the world. Because these experiences have been passed down to me in my blood, I must, it's in my blood, I must speak out loudly against the overwhelming killing of innocent lives in Gaza, including close to 7,000 children. Anything less would be a betrayal to all those people throughout history, including my relatives, who were killed unjustly based upon their religion or any other immutable characteristics or their identity. Thank you, Supervisor Preston.
Thank you, Supervisor Ronan.